and welcome to Jedi Jingle Maker. I would encourage you to subscribe, comment, and like this video. I do guitar reviews. I also create original music with those guitars and music gear. Check it out on the channel. Today we are going to review this beautiful Firefly FFST guitar, which is a heavy Relic finish on it. I will first show you every feature of the guitar that we can see on the outside from top to bottom. And I will give you the pros and cons I feel are associated with each part of it. In the second part of the video, I will outline the modifications I have planned for this beast, which are many and will be so fun to do. Stay tuned for the video on that, which I'll be releasing after this video. So you should be able to get that on the channel. Okay, let's get right in to checking this thing out. First, some of my thoughts on relicing in general. I've never even thought of getting a Relic'd guitar. I've looked at them before in videos and so on and always thought, why would someone get a Relic'd guitar? That was always my thought. Why would they get that? And then I saw this guitar, which of course has the naked swamp ash jumping out at you, and it just seemed right. And I like the pattern, I like the pickup configuration, and I like the price. So I figured, why not give it a try? I got this guitar after I had already purchased its cousin there, another FFST, and I purchased that one to see if I would like these, and I liked that one so much I got this one. Now this one has many differences between it and that other guitar. I'll cover that in a separate video, but on a general level, one of the things it has different on this guitar is vintage style hardware. That means the old style trim. We'll take a close look at all this stuff in just a moment. And these vintage tuners, and if you look at the back, that's a more or less a classic vintage tuner setup there, but locking. I'll tell you all about those. I'll also tell you about something I discovered about these tuners when I took one off to check it out. That's very important to know. Okay, let's look at this guitar from the bottom all the way to the top, starting with the bottom. First, let's take a close look at this finish. You can see that it's heavily Relic'd is the term that they use. Various carved letters and so on in it. And I don't know how they achieve this effect, but I think they really pull it off. One thing you're not worried about too much is bumping this guitar into something and chipping it, because it would just blend right in. And you can see that it's really nice with this swamp ash. You really get to see the grain of the wood, which I love. And it's got a nice tight grain, which I've always found to produce a nice tone, so I'm very happy with the sound, even acoustically, of this guitar. But the pickups sound actually decent in this one compared to my other one. But you can see how they scratched it like your belt buckle was scratching into it. They even extend those scratches into the, whatever this is, finish on the back. Very, very cool. I've seen some of them where it looks like they almost tried to make it look a little dirty on the back, like it was just dirty. And you can see they kind of did that here by putting some kind of something in those scratches. Here's another aspect of the finish. Look at how they've darkened the finish here to make it look like it's been played in for a long time. It's really cool. This is a very smooth, very fast playable neck. So that's another nice touch. They even, like on the headstock, check out this. On the headstock they have various areas of it kind of weathered look. So just all around, very nice guitar. Let's talk about how much this cost. Well, it was on sale, so I think it was listed for $159, then it was about $28 shipping. The whole thing came to $183 shipped, which I thought was an incredible deal, especially considering all the specs that you get on this guitar. I am looking for a guitar in this range that I can use as a solid platform for doing modifications moving forward. Changing pickups to get the exact tone I want, all those kinds of things. Achieve rock solid tuning stability and more. And I thought when I purchased this guitar, the first guitar, that I was going to be actually very disappointed that there's no way there could be anything near what I wanted in a guitar like this at this price, but I was very surprised. Now, the two guitars are different in many ways. In fact, I would say the fretwork is better on this one, and the hardware is much better on that one. Starting at the bottom, look at this strap button. You can see that it is fastened directly to the body, no like felt washer. I don't think that's a problem. I just usually see a little bit of a felt in between there on most of the guitars I have. However, the connection is so solid, and really that's something I want to point out about this whole guitar, is that the connection points are so solid throughout. They really, on this guitar and the other guitar that I got, they did a great job tightening up all the hardware, and it's not loose anywhere. And this wood is dense enough that it feels like the screw holes were drilled properly, and that the screws are going to hold in those holes very well, like it's just a solid structure, this ash wood body. Which brings me on to, of course, the material for the body is ash wood. The material for the neck is roasted maple. Roasted maple is what they say, so I think that's Canadian hard rock maple, which is pretty cool. But the swamp ash wood is known to be a very musical tone wood, and you can really tell the difference when you play a swamp ash guitar like this and hold it against your body as you're strumming, chords. You can feel it resonate through your body very powerfully. Take a guitar like my Nick Johnston with an alder body, same thing, greatly reduced vibration of the body of the guitar. And it, of course, affects the tone of what comes out of the guitar. It affects how everything vibrates. So this guitar with this swamp ash, or I'll just say ash wood body, presents all kinds of a tonal palette that I want to build upon with excellent pickups and hardware and, like I said, tuning stability. So the ash body was a huge draw for me, and I can say after playing it a little bit, even with these Chromie factory strings that are on it, it sounds good musically, acoustically, which is a great sign for the instrument. Okay, moving up to the jack. This is a standard, I would call it Stratocaster style jack input. They're fine, in my opinion, no problem. However, this one, when you put the input in, it goes in, but it doesn't like click. So I'm not sure exactly what the issue is, but it's probably one of about two things, both of which I know how to fix, which is that the end of the thing here is hitting up against the cavity because these holes weren't drilled exactly in the right place. So it's just too far up against the body. I can easily have a Dremel tool and just kind of carve out that section, and that fixes that without having to re-drill the holes. So that's easy. Another thing could be that, well, the jack itself is just messed up in some way. If that's the case, I can try to bend it back to where it will click, but if not, I will absolutely just buy a replacement. That would be a good upgrade anyway. I would keep this plate, which you can see all the hardware on this guitar, including that plate, have been, looks like sandblasted. So they all have that antiqued look, which I think is very interesting. All right, now let's move up to the bridge. This is an antique 6-screw style bridge. I've never had one of these. These never appealed to me, but I wanted to get this guitar with this classic bridge on it because I've heard that this produces the best tone for a Stratocaster, this type of bridge with all 6 connection points, at this amount of connection points. Increases the tone, gives you more of a stratty sound, and so far I can say I noticed a bit of a very stratty sound on this thing, so I'm very pleased. You can see that this has also been heavily Relic'd or weathered, and I claim that's a bit of an issue. These are the bent steel style saddles on here, which I was able to get intonated without much problem, so that's good. And I was able to adjust the action slightly at first, which is good just to get a feel for the guitar. I'm not going to do much of it now because these are 10s or 11s, and what I want to put on here are 9s, so I'm going to be setting everything up differently. But, you know, the bridge itself, fairly pleased with it. Another thing is, if you look at the bridge straight down, these saddles are all squared up with the bridge. If you look at how the strings orient to the neck, there's a nice uniform spacing from the edge of the fretboard. They're not too far out because these ball end frets, they actually come in a little bit from the edge of the fretboard, so it's nice to just make sure that's perfect. You know, even if you look at how the strings line up with the heads of the pickups, even that's pretty good. That's something I always kind of look at to see if everything is just lined up correctly. Another thing is to look at the relationship of this pickguard to the tremolo, and you can see that's also very, very uniform. So all those things are really good. But I'll tell you this, these saddles must and will go. If you watch the video, you'll see what I replace them with. I think you will like it. It's a radical upgrade, and I think this is responsible for some of the lack of tuning stability I'm now experiencing in this guitar. After I'm done showing you all the specs, I'll also give you my impression of how it plays. But I really won't be able to judge how it plays until I get it finished and to where I want it to be. But I'm going to replace these, so whatever tuning instability or issues these present, which I don't like them, and I think they do vibrate a little bit. One, if I put my finger on it, I stop a little bit like of a vibration. So I don't like these. I'm getting rid of them, but still the structure, the tremolo itself, great. We'll look at the back when we open up both cavities in the next part of the video. But I like this tremolo. One other thing I like is I don't plan to really use it. I just want it to be locked down to the base. I want to use this more or less like a fixed bridge. And you can see it's locked right down to the body. The amount of springs, we'll see what they have in the back, but when I put the arm on and tried to use it, it was very, very stiff in that tremolo. I'm interested to see what it is, but that's exactly what I wanted. I'll see if I have to add springs. I have some Fender springs I can add if I need to do that. Okay, let's move on now to the pickguard. The pickguard has been weathered like everything else, and you can see it's already an off-white kind of pickguard, but it's been made old looking by, you know, splotches and sandblasting, and it feels kind of rough to the touch, which I think is cool. The knobs, I put the volume and tone on the wrong places when I put these back on. These initially had plastic underneath the knobs, oddly enough, and it was making a weird sound. This one had that, and the other one had it too. But this one had what looked like the plastic was all like very worn, like this kind of worn, like it had been sandblasted or something, and like these were on when they sandblasted it, it seemed like. And I even found a little bit of grittiness underneath it. So I, you know, removed all that, but then when I put them back, I put the knobs on the wrong place. It won't matter because I'm going to be taking all this off when I shield this. That's one of the major upgrades I have planned. But again, stay tuned to the end of the video to hear about them all. And also stay tuned to the video after this video where I go in and perform all of those changes on here so you get to see how every single thing went in and how easy it is to do if you just have a few of the right tools and some patience to learn how on, I think, inexpensive guitars is the great way to learn. That's how I'm learning. In terms of the hardware itself, the switches and the knobs, the pots, they feel good. They felt good on both guitars. They feel like a good amount of resistance, but not too much. Uniform tension. This feels like a very solid 5-way switch. You know, you could just tell right away when you play around with hardware if it's got that cheap feel to it, and it doesn't. So I'll be interested to see what kind of pots are in there. And the other one, we had full-size 250K pots in here, but very nice job on the electronics on the other one. Also very nice job on the routing on the other one. It's going to be very interesting to see how the routing is on this one. One little note on the pickguard is that the screws are not Relic'd, and I like that. I like the look of it being a Frankenstrat almost every time, regardless of the guitar, but especially this one. So, for instance, the bridge saddles are not going to be non-traditional bridge saddles. They'll be ones that achieve exactly what I want to achieve. The tuning heads will be completely what I want to achieve. I won't be trying to make sure they have this Relic'd finish on them, let's say, to be limited by that. I'm not saying I would close my mind to it, but I'm not going to be limited by it. And I don't think it's... Okay, let's talk about the pickups now. The pickups on this guitar are actually surprisingly okay. I would actually be okay with leaving them in here, this hump, for a little while, see how I like them. But I'm definitely upgrading moving forward. That's one of the things I just love to do. There are many single coils I want to try and I'm curious about. So I'll be putting many different pickups into these slots as well as this one. But I can tell you that this humbucker is a very cool sounding humbucker. It has a classic kind of sound to it. I wouldn't say it's thin, it's just a little less boomy than a lot of my Seymour Duncan humbuckers like the Nazgul, and you know, these are high output pickups. You can tell this one has got less output. I didn't measure it, but I would imagine that it's not super high output. It's more like vintage voiced, which I'd like for this guitar. These two single coils, they were a little quiet when I first turned the guitar on, but I raised them up just a little bit, and I'm not sweating stuff like that because, like I said, I'm going to change most of it. But decent. I would say for me a little more muddy than I would like in a single coil pickup, but I would say they would work. And if you were a beginner or you just didn't care that much about having, you know, crazy great tone, they would be perfectly adequate. The cool thing is that it works electronically. It all works electronically, and that is one of the most important things. And the electronics themselves are an excellent foundation for building on, I would claim. Like, I don't have to worry about replacing all of the electronics. I can just focus on the pickups. And if I want to upgrade to, say, 500K pots or something like that in the future, or a better 5-way switch or whatever else, put a kill switch in. It's interesting, you know, I'm going to be also interested to see if this one has a little cavity here. The other one had like a little box cavity where you could put in like a kill switch or additional switches. So that was cool. And I don't know why they did that, but I'm very curious. I'm wondering if one of their future models will utilize that cavity in some way, like they just planned it and they just have them all cut like that. Fascinating. This guitar is more or less totally usable out of the box. Maybe a little bit of a truss rod adjustment, a little bit of adjustment of the saddles, which I could claim just about anybody honestly could do. And we're moving up to that stage here, which is where we get to the spoke wheel truss rod adjustment. That is such a high-end feature for a guitar like this, and it's very easy to just pull or push this to give relief to the neck or add relief, you know, tighten it or loosen it. And depending on what you do there's plenty of videos on the internet on how to do that. It's not that hard, but it's never been easier than by using this method. All you need is a little metal rod to pull that off, and it works great. Both of them I have played around a little bit and just, you know, fiddled with the neck. I also have a nice fret edge, so I can tell how flat the neck is and get it as flat as I want it to be and put a little bit of relief in it usually. But this makes it very easy to kind of set it up out of the box. If you don't know how to do a little bit of setup, and what I mean is adjusting the saddles a bit, maybe turning the truss rod a quarter turn or a half turn in either direction and kind of dialing that in. If you are unwilling to do that yourself, which I claim you should learn how to do it. It's fun. I mean, and by the way, your guitar is going to move over time. It's going to move as the temperature and humidity changes in your area. So knowing how to kind of adjust it to go with the flow of the seasons is a really useful skill. So I claim go ahead and learn it. You can do it. But otherwise, you're going to be paying somebody probably $60 to do it for you. And they'll probably do a great job. So maybe sometimes you want to do that even if you do know how to kind of get it set up initially, just to really dial it in. But this is a great spec, a great feature. It compares with many high-end guitars, certainly Charvel, Schecter, and others that do that. But that's a very high-end feature. Now, looking at the fretboard itself, just look at the top to start. Very nice finish, I would claim. It's not like gloss. It's more like a I don't know, slightly polished satin. It's just beautiful. And this is a Rosewood fretboard, so classic. It looks like the abalone inlays, which are really nice. I mean, look at that. Really kind of cool looking, but not overdone. Easy to see, certainly. So it's a very playable guitar. These ball end stainless steel frets are absolutely insane. I mean, almost unbelievable to even think that they could be in a guitar of this price range, and they are. The fret leveling of this guitar is actually really good, and we can go ahead and check that out with the fret rocker right now, and I can show you what I'm talking about. Now, this is a StewMac fret rocker. I'll put a link in the description, but it's a great tool to have. I think you should have one like this. This is a quality one, so you know it's going to work. And all you do is have it so it spans 3 frets and just see if it'll rock. And you can see here, this one's not rocking. That means that those frets are completely level. That one's not rocking. that one's not rocking. And you just repeat this process all the way across the fretboard and you can get an idea, not rocking. All right, let's fast forward and you can see me do every single one. I'll stop it when I find one that isn't. Okay, there is just the ever so slightest amount of rock there, almost not present, still there, and then it's gone. So just this one has a little bit of height through the middle. That's the kind of thing a fret level can easily solve. All right, let's keep going. I'll stop my 5. Okay, we got just a little bit, just the slightest bit right towards the end. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, we got just the slightest bit. I mean, this is so little, but I gotta mention every place, and there's still just a tiniest here, and it's gone. So just a little bit in the center of that one. Okay, there's just a tiniest here. Every one that I found here is just so insignificant. I mean, if you have significant issues, it's like, you can tap it back and forth, and it's just not. Okay, a little bit right there on the very highest fret. And maybe just a little right here. And then almost gone on the edge, but still coming through. So that is incredible. Every one of those was super minor, but maybe 4 or 5 places where you had some very minor issues. That means that you could fret level this and get it to perfection without having to remove hardly anything in terms of metal from these frets. So that's amazing. That is incredible. It certainly plays wonderfully, and a nice flat fretboard. By the way, that's the other thing I want to mention here. So this is a compound radius. It goes from, I think, a 12 to I think 16, but don't quote me, but it's, the radius changes, and that's where it is a little bit less, a little more round up here towards the top where you can do chords more easily, and then a little more flat up towards the top so you can do those faster licks more easily. So, who doesn't love that? Great fretboard. We'll look at the back of the neck here when we turn it over. And now let's move on to the headstock. I love the natural wood headstock, and I like the shape of this one. I said that in the last video, but I do like it. I'll dare say I like it more than the Fender headstock personally. That big round ball on the end never really appealed to me, even though some of my favorite guitarists always played it, like Jimi Hendrix and so on. So it had a certain romance to it, but I actually preferred aesthetically the shape of this more, honestly. Fender people don't hate me too much. And here's another thing I want to point out, which are these, inexpensive bent metal string trees. They are, in my opinion, horrible. I think they are an absolute creator of string instability. The first thing I would do would be to get them off. I don't think you really, look like half-size pegs, so I don't think you really need this one. But I do think you probably need one here, especially with these tuners. So I would replace them. What I'm going to do is replace them with a harder material string tree. Stay tuned to see what I use, but it's tried and true for me. And I just have one here, like the Nick Johnston. And another reason is to kind of dampen the strings up above on the headstock here, because since this vibrates so much, my guess is this would create that kind of harp effect where these strings vibrate too much when you're playing heavy chords. If you're really listening, that kind of stuff can happen. So that also helps with that, which is why I'd probably put a string tree here regardless. But, especially if you're going to be using that tremolo, you want to have this at a place that is not a friction point. Another thing I want to notice that I noticed on both of the guitars is that they wrapped the strings around and around the locking tuners. And you're not supposed to do that. The reason is that creates tuning instability issues. It's a lot of extra string, and that creates issues with tuning. It also creates issues using that tremolo, you know, making tuning problems. That'll be no problem because I'm going to replace them. And if you stay tuned to the video, you'll see what special tuners I had to get to replace these, but they actually weren't as expensive as the ones I normally get. All right, let's turn it over and look at the other side. Now, of course, this beautiful wood grain I just obsess about, but I really love it. I'm surprised at the absolute quality of this wood, to be honest. I will mention that it is 3 pieces of ash. You can see there's one piece that runs through here. It's one larger piece, and then there's one piece that comes through here, and then there's this outside piece, and that's it. So 3 pieces, doesn't matter. In fact, great, no problem. Still, I'm amazed that I can get this type of wood here. You can see that the trem cavity plate is a 1-ply plate, but it's actually very sturdy feel to it, honestly. And I found it to be very easy to put the strings through the holes on the other one, and you can see the holes are easily accessible here. So we'll take this plate off in the next phase of this video. So we'll do that in just a moment. You can see special marks like this that I pointed out earlier, but just so much detail on the back of this guitar. It really is, I think, super cool. Now this is a sort of a feature they have in some of the higher end Strats, this sort of plate here, which I think is kind of cool, and I do think it makes a big difference to get rid of this corner actually. But this is different than the other one I got, which has a more like Nick Johnston Schecter tilt in style heel, but this one actually has the corner cut off and then the plate curved in. You still get the 4 bolts. I checked these connection points, again, very, very tight, so feel really good about that. And you can also see that the connection points on this guitar are very tight in the pocket. So the way that the neck fits into the body and so on and so forth is very nice. I'm going to take this sticker off. I don't like stickers on guitars. Problem is they get that glue under there. So one of the things I'm going to make sure that I accomplish here is to get all of that sticker off and all that glue off. It's just a bad idea. Well, it'll break down over time, and then the glue gets on your board and yuck. So we're taking that off. Now look at this neck. Roasted Canada maple. I suppose it's a hard rock maple, I would assume, but who knows? It's a maple neck. It's beautiful. It's roasted, which means it's got this incredible feel to it, just so glass-like and smooth. And I think it's cool with this added touch, artistic touch on the back. I wasn't sure if I'd like it. I like it. And of course those markings on the back to make it look banged up. Now look at these classic style tuners. I had high hopes that these would be as good as the tuners on that other Firefly I got, which are really incredible. I mean, they are rock solid. I have no plan to remove them. These just about met my expectation, which is to say they really looked good, but they didn't really work great. What I mean is there's a lot of give in the keys themselves. There's some that kind of, you know, you turn, they just don't respond, and there's like, you know, yeah, give. So I can't work with that. I think this is part of a tuning issue on this guitar too, which is why I'm not judging it in terms of tuning stability. The other one I got was horrible tuning stability out of the box initially, and I fixed it, and now it is rock solid tuning stability with a floating trem on it. So I believe I can easily do the same to this, considering that this is basically going to be like a fixed bridge with that trem locked down to the body. So I think it's going to be even easier, and it should be a super resonant guitar, but I've got to get these off, so I'm going to replace them with something far, far better. But I want to tell you about what I discovered when I took off that low E tuner, and that was that these holes that these tuners are in are the 8.5 millimeter holes, not the 10.5, which modern tuners use. So these are the classic vintage sized holes. It's important to know if you're going to order the tuners to get the right ones. And I found a brand that I love and I've used before, so I'm going to put those in. They're going to look great. It actually has a plate that goes over here that makes sure they line up, but makes it so you don't have to re-drill the holes, but you have them all in a nice perfect row, and they'll be locking, and they'll fit the 8.5 holes, and we will be off to the races. If you look at this, if you look at these tuners, they don't have the bolts on the top. They have these little inserts. So you just undo the screws and then kind of pop the insert out from the other side, and it usually just pops right out, or with a little bit of a tap of a screwdriver, it'll come out. And the new ones that I'm putting in have nuts that you tighten down with a wrench or whatever, socket wrench, and get it nice and snug fit. But I can't wait to replace those. That's something I expected to change in these, and quite frankly, I have no problem changing in them. I love the tuners I'm going to put on here. I've used them on other guitars, and really looking forward to just having them as part of a quality instrument setup here. I've never liked these like skinny post, old school looking knob thing. It's not my style. So that's going to look cool. I'm actually going to go with chrome, like regular non-weathered chrome there, which I think will be very cool. Now here's another feature as we turn the guitar over, and almost forgot it, and that is the bone nut. I have a feeling there could be a minor issue with this nut on the E and A string, that it's causing a bit of an issue, because there's a little bit more buzzing than I would expect. Nothing intolerable, but a little bit more than I'd expect. So I don't think that's caused at all by the flatness of by the straightness of the neck, or at all by the frets, because we just checked it out. It's really good frets. I think there's just a little bit of a issue in the nut. I might have to have that replaced. If I do have it replaced, I'll probably have it replaced with a black tusk nut, graphite nut. And that's a fine upgrade to do as well. So no problem. That's one of the big reasons I get a guitar like this, and that is to modify, tinker, turn it into my guitar. There are many like them, but this one is mine. So I'm really gonna have a good time turning it into something cool. Okay, now let's go into phase 2 of the video, where we unlock the power of what's in here, where we look inside, under the pickguard and under the trem plate, and see how this thing is put together. In order to do that, we're gonna have to take off these strings. Now I won't be playing this guitar again until it is reborn. So there are lots of videos already out there about people playing Fireflies, and you hear the tone of the pickups. It's very subjective any way you take it. The pickup sound, I mean, they're inexpensive pickups that they'll do. You can't compare them to a Seymour Duncan pickup, a humbucker, or single coil pickups. It's not even comparable. So there's no sense in doing that. If you want to have great pickups, you're going to change them one way or another. But these will work. These will work just fine. Really great for most people. For me, I'm recording. I have a little recording studio that I do here all the time. So the tone, I'm very meticulous about it. But if you weren't, it would be no problem. All right, let's get right into it. Very interesting. I don't know why I had to do that, but I did find myself having to remove this pickup in order to take this out. That's not going to be okay. I wonder why that is. I might have to take a little bit of this off the pickguard in order to remedy that situation, but that's not supposed to be the way it is. That's surprising. Now, another thing that's interesting is that, very interesting, you can see that the trem screws actually come through the body. So that's an unexpected aspect of this. We can actually ground to the trem right inside this cavity, because we have it conductor right here. So interesting, to say the least. This one has got, it looks like, yeah, graphite. That's graphite. So this has got a graphite shielding in it. The other one I got did not. This one also looks very clean. No issues, really? Well, let's move on. Let's move on. Yep, same electronics that they had in the other one. I don't know about the pickups, the types of pickups, but they have these capacitors, these large capacitors. They have the large size pots. These are, I could see it says 250K pots on them. Yeah, these are easy to work with, certainly. It looks like the grounding, the solder connections are nice. Nice solid solder connections. Look like all the connections are correct. I mean, the thing worked, so I know it's correct to some extent. Okay, interesting cloth wires, which I think is very, very cool. Certainly on these pickups. I like the cloth wires. Big fan. And I can put this pickup back on here. I do intend on leaving this pickup on, but on this guitar, but I'm not going to have it on when I change the, when I add shielding to this pickguard. I'll have to take everything off again, but this thing has me kind of perplexed as to why it wouldn't come out. For some reason, it was stuck in there. Okay, interesting. I can see there that, I don't know if I just did that or if it was like that, but it looks like this cable has got the plastic coating scraped off of it pretty significantly, but not in a way that it hasn't gotten to the wires beneath. But maybe I'll put a little electric tape on that. Otherwise, this looks pretty good. It really does. Not a problem whatsoever. You can see the color of the pickguard, it's just a little more off-white. It's interesting. They do have this shielding on the inside of the cavity, but that's nowhere near adequate. And one thing I want you to notice here is that this shielding is complete, in my opinion, the shielding in this cavity is completely 100% useless. And the reason is that it is not connected through to this shielding. So in order to have the shielding work, it's got to be grounded. You can ground to the volume pot. Oh, see where all these little black wires are? That means after I put in the shielding, you can look at my video, my next video, to see me do it. But when I shield this, I'll also solder a wire from here down to a eye connector that I'll screw into the side of the body, into the shielding to make a connection. I'm also going to overlap onto these screw points the shielding, copper shielding that I'll put in here. I'm going to put it right over the graphite, no problem at all. It's two-way conductive shielding I use, so it'll actually bond with the graphite and form an even thicker layer, no problem. And I'm going to make the entire back plate shielded. So this whole thing will be gold colored with copper, and that makes a big antenna to receive interference on and spread the signal. So this is all good. It just, only thing shielding does is reduce the noise. It doesn't eliminate it, but you can reduce it significantly. But if you don't do things like ground it properly, I see this in guitars all the time, not just this guitars, but Ibanez and others, where they, and Schecter also, where they've shielded the cavity, but they haven't connected it through. I suppose you could say maybe it was connected through here, but it was a little bit louder than I thought it should be for a shielded guitar. I didn't know it was shielded, but it was pretty loud, like single coils are. But maybe this shielded it, this bonded it to this shielding from the trem claw that goes into the pickup cavity. Interesting. Well, all this I can work with, and this will all be a great fun project for me. But for now, let's see if we can get this sucker back in there. Okay, now if it was that high in the guitar, for real, it would be touching the strings, but I'm not too concerned about that. I just want to see if I can get this. Oh, that is the weirdest thing ever. I don't know how they fit this in there. If you can't fit it in that way. Just don't know. Is there a secret way? And that is why you have a rotary tool. That's actually not a Dremel, it's just a cheap rotary tool that I got. But look, that pickguard came out pretty good. Now I don't have to worry about that nonsense. Every single time I put this thing on, I can more or less finagle it under there. The way it was before, it was like I practically had to break the pickup to get it back under there, which is no good. So let's screw this back on and we'll look on the other side. Now we'll take off the back plate. Let's see what we have in the tremolo area. Okay, wow, just 3 trem springs. Interesting, but look at the size of that block. Wow, that thing is nice, burly. It looks good. Interesting. Oh wow, they have the, I see, they have the trem block absolutely all the way, claw, all the way up to the body. That's very interesting. Well, the cavity itself looks pretty clean though, the routing. But I did not expect to see that block all the way to here. No wonder it is so tight. Okay. Well, that makes sense. Definitely. Yeah, you can see there's no play on that whatsoever. That is a super janky weld. I don't know about that weld. We might have to redo that weld. That's another thing. It doesn't look that good. If you want to look for a good weld, it's usually nice and shiny. It looks like it pulled up. This looks like it's just globbed on there, barely stuck on. So I don't know, it seems like it's physically attached, but that's easy enough to change. Now, by the way, there's shielding back in here too. This does something actually, because it is grounded through with this trim plate, so it is connected through to the grounding. But interesting that they shielded this side too. I wasn't expecting this one to be shielded yet, the other one not to be. One last thing we'll do is check the radius of the fretboard. That's a 14, and I'm going to check it on this. Yeah, and it fits. I think that's what they said was 14-inch radius. I think it was a 10 or 12, but we'll try a couple different ones. Here we go, it's 20. There's 12. Maybe it's more like a 10. Yeah, so it seems more like a 10 radius here and more like a 14 up here. So 10 to 14 would be what I'd say this thing is. And let's just check for grains and giggles what it is on the higher fret. So 14. Yeah, it's 14 there too. Maybe even a little more flat than 14. That's interesting. Let's try 15. Yeah, that's more like a 15 for sure. So it actually looks like it goes from a 10 compound all the way up to a 15. Overall, solid construction. Very, very happy with this. Can't wait to start modifying it. I hope you're looking forward to it also. And I hope you will give me a sub if you haven't already. Thank you for watching. Jedi Jingle Maker,